Alright, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Dias Albani with student numbers 23020154164 from the GIC 2023 D class. On this occasion, I will discuss about the 2004 movie The Terminal. I will not discuss in detail about the whole movies, but I will discuss around 5 points from these movies that related to the final project of the GIC course. Next, I will tell you about how this film begins. The initial scene begins with an animated wall showing the flight clock, which shows the name of the film is The Terminal. Then the scene continues with the presence of someone from the fictional country of Krakosia. The next scene shows how crowded and busy an airport in America is. Coincidentally, this film is set at John F. Kennedy International Airport in the New York City area, after which the main character appears walking towards the identity checkpoint. In this scene, it can be seen that Mr. Navorsky starts his conversation with a black person who is assigned as a security agent to check the identity cards, passports, and visas of all people visiting America. Then, Mr. Navorsky answered in English, which is not good and fluent enough. This is where the first problem arose. The security officer discovered that Mr. Navorsky's passport and visa cards were invalid, which led to Mr. Navorsky's temporary detention in a further screening area for further interrogation. Actually, there are several subpoints of language limitation, one of which is the difference in language used differently between Mr. Navorsky and the security officer so that it can cause additional suspicion to Mr. Navorsky, which will make it difficult in the future. In this scene, it can be seen that Mr. Navorsky tries to explain to the security officer, but the security officer doesn't really understand, so he can only take a few notes from what Mr. Navorsky said. So, he is officially detained by airport security and not allowed to leave the airport. Next, here are some subpoints about what is included in non-verbal communication that can be used by many people in communication. But most people only use hand gestures and eye contact to communicate non-verbally to each other. In this scene, finally Mr. Navorsky was called by the security supervisor who was in charge of the field. The officer used clear English with a distinctive American accent so that Mr. Navorsky could understand well, but Mr. Navorsky still did not understand. Here are 4 elements of verbal communication. These 4 things are basic and important to know and master in order to be smooth when communicating with others. But in practice, most people only focus on the diction of words but do not pay attention to other elements so that it can cause confusion to the listener. The next problem is the clash of cultures. This is shown clearly in the movies when someone asks for help, namely Mr. Navorsky, to everyone around him, but is ignored completely. This reflects how the individualist culture is very thickly attached to American society. Culture shock is something that is quite familiar to someone who moves around a lot or goes on holiday to another place. However, many of the general public doesn't know about it, so it can be quite shocking for someone who is experiencing it for the first time. The next issue is the difference in value dimensions between Mr. Navorsky and Mr. Frank Dixon. Mr. Navorsky has a low uncertainty avoidance, whereas this is very different when compared to Mr. Frank Dixon, who has a high ability to avoid uncertainty. Actually, the issue of differences in value dimensions is a complex problem that can occur due to many factors. This shows us that each individual carries their own values, which can influence how someone thinks, speaks, and acts within society. In these movies, there are also several variations of English that are quite familiar to many people, one of which is English with an Indian accent. One of the distinctive features of the Indian accent is the pronunciation of the word thing, which is often pronounced as thing. We can also find one of the three native English accents, the American accent. The American accent is a native accent in addition to the British and Australian accents. This accent is used by character Frank Dixon, who acts as the supervisor of the airport security department. Regards to Caucasian English, it doesn't exist in real life, but if we look from the perspective of Eastern European history, we can understand that Eastern Europeans have a unique way of pronouncing English which is the same as Mr. Navorsky used in these movies. After a long moment of analyzing these movies, we can know about all the problems and diversity of English language types in the world present in these movies. And do you think about what kind of resolution we can do to prevent similar things from happening again in the future? Here, I summarize 5 easy steps for you so that it can be a solution to this problem. And by knowing the solution, I hope you can avoid similar problems in the future because it is better for us to know before a problem comes and take precautions so that it doesn't happen again in the future.